We're joined by Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist from Cairo, and we're also joined by Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri, a managing editor at Al Ahram newspaper from Cairo as well, to unravel the story behind the U.S. decision to hold funding for UNRWA, a move that has left millions of Palestinian refugees wondering if their lifeline will soon disappear and what it means for the global humanitarian efforts in the region already on the brink. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen, and I would start with Dr. Osman. Now, what are the reasons behind President Trump's decision to stop funding UNRWA, in your own opinion?
Thank you, Hannah, for having me. Greetings to you and to your guest. I think Trump's latest decision regarding UNRWA is not an isolated incident. It's not unrelated to previous actions taken by the U.S. administration against UNRWA and even against the Palestinian people in Gaza in general in support of the Israeli occupation. Basically, this is part of a huge systematic campaign to uproot the Palestinian people from the Gaza Strip and from their ancestral land. How will they go about doing this? By destroying all the means of life and sustenance inside the Gaza Strip. UNRWA has been one of the key lifelines that has been keeping the Palestinian people alive and well, despite the Israeli occupation and the inhumane condition that the Israeli occupation has persistently and intentionally created in the occupied areas. UNRWA has been one of the main alleviating factors that allowed the Palestinians to stay in their lands by providing humanitarian aid, by providing education and other basic services and healthcare. However, now with the first of all, by the defunding of UNRWA by the United States, started by the Biden administration and many other Western governments, and then by through Israel banning UNRWA, and even during the Gaza war, the active phase of hostilities in the Gaza war, they have intentionally targeted UNRWA personnel, killing more than 200 people who worked for UNRWA. And so it is a part of a bigger and larger plan. And now with the latest manifestation of these sinister policies, the United States officially pulls out of UNRWA, meaning that the U.S. funding is gone for good. And of course, this is a very alarming signal, and it only serves the displacement plans proposed by the current U.S. administration and supported by Israel.
Exactly. Mr. Al-Ashri, can other international organizations fill the gap left by reduced U.S. funding?
Of course, there are a lot of negotiations with the Gulf states to double the UNRWA funding, in addition to Germany, France, Norway, and other European states who pledged to the United Nations to continue the funding of UNRWA. And during the next conference for foreign affairs ministers, they pledged to increase the funding of the UNRWA to overcome this financial shortage due to the U.S. withdrawal of funding in this very critical timing, and that's to keep the UNRWA operating with its vital integral role to the Palestinian populations, despite of all pressures and Israeli restrictions after banning UNRWA and closing the UNRWA office in Jerusalem by Israel. And there is a desire that is Egyptian and Arab to the necessity of continuing the UNRWA work that not only serves the Gaza and the West Bank, but also for around 5.6 million Palestinians in Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. This Arab endeavor to keep the UNRWA operating is coherent and strong to fund the UNRWA again without the U.S. decision impacting the UNRWA activities to revive the Palestinian cause, serving the Palestinian people and providing all essential services without any gaps, including healthcare, education, services to Palestinians inside Gaza and the West Bank and abroad.
Okay. Dr. Osman, you said that this decision is only part of a larger scheme. So how might this decision influence peace negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
Of course, it can have.
I think we believe we lost Dr. Osman due to technical error, but we still have Mr. Al-Ashri with us. So, Mr. Al-Ashri, what is the current state of humanitarian aid in Gaza, and how will it be affected by this decision?
For 15 months, Israel has been exerting and practicing all pressures possible to obstacle the humanitarian aid access in Gaza, starving the Gazan population, to impose a new de facto to displace the Gazan population. Egypt, since day one, has revealed these practices and the reasons behind them, to impose a new de facto of shortage in medical devices and treatment in the Palestinian hospitals. Egypt has always desired has always been persistent to enter the humanitarian aid of all kinds: food, medical supplies, preventive supplies, and also providing all kinds of support to the Gaza population in cooperation with the United Nations, especially that Egypt placed the condition to for the ceasefire to be implemented, to allow the humanitarian aid access, which is stipulated in the ceasefire agreement. Egypt reopened the Rafah crossing to ensure the access of humanitarian aid.
Dr. Osman, welcome back to the program. I believe we lost you for a few moments, but before we did, I was asking you that we were talking about this decision being part of a larger scheme to displace the Palestinians. How might this decision influence peace negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
Of course, Hala, it can be to the absolute detriment of the ongoing ceasefire talks. As we know, the second phase of the ceasefire, the negotiations for the second phase of the ceasefire have already stalled due to Israeli non-cooperation and the stringent Israeli attitude in the negotiations, and also because they are not facilitating, as agreed upon, all the humanitarian aid that has been agreed upon at the first phase of the ceasefire and detainee exchange agreement. And of course, the statements about displacement complicated matters even further. And now, with the cutting of aid for UNRWA, one of the main aid distributors inside the Gaza Strip and the other occupied Palestinian territories, this will even further complicate the ceasefire talks, because, as you know, Hala, one of the key components of the agreement was the distribution of aid. The agreement stipulated that 600 aid trucks should enter the Gaza Strip on a daily basis, and that bulldozers and equipment should enter the Gaza Strip in order to remove the rubble and start and pave the way for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. However, Israel is stalling the entry of some of the aid, especially some of the tents. Today, the local authorities in Gaza said that only 10% of the needed tents have been admitted into the Gaza Strip, which means that the Israelis are trying to impede the flow of aid in violation of the agreement. And of course, the dismemberment of UNRWA, the attempted dismemberment of the UNRWA by the Trump administration will not help. It will only complicate the matters further and will only further and worsen the humanitarian crisis inside the Gaza Strip. Just one last point. Today, the health authorities inside Gaza said that 40% of patients who receive or depend on kidney dialysis in order to live have already died and perished over the past few weeks. This is a staggering figure, and I think that the humanitarian crisis will only get worse with the dismemberment of UNRWA.
Yes. Dr. Osman, I also wanted to ask you, since you are an international relations expert, did you notice any significant reactions from other major donors like Europe or Arab states?
For example, Ireland today has pitched that it will donate Reports are there that other countries are willing to increase their financial.
I cannot hear you properly, Dr. Osman. We'll try to get back to you, but I will go to Mr. Al-Ashri now. Sir, how does donor fatigue impact long-term support for refugee populations globally?
Of course, this is very important, and the UNRWA commissioner warned a few months ago when he visited the Arab League and delivered a speech before the Arab states representatives, and said that cutting the fund directly influences the food and water and basics for Palestinian populations and for Arab refugees in different states around the world. Given the tensions that has been going on different Arab capitals since the Arab Spring 2011. So these donors are very important, and the lack of funding now leads to the decline of the services provided, and the UNRWA now is facing this decline. So friendly states to Israel cutting the funding led to the decline of the healthcare and services provided to refugees in the Middle East. The United Nations has been facing a lot of financial obstacles because a lot of countries have not been paying their dues allocations to UNRWA or the United Nations, which impedes the basic services provided. Today we face also the obstacles and impediments to the humanitarian aid access to Gaza. And also now we see a lot of support to the UNRWA, and a lot of countries are advocating for more funding to the UNRWA to help around 5.6 Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, the camps in different Arab capitals in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. And this requires more allocations and financial transactions for the UNRWA in the light of the cooperation protocol between the United Nations and the Arab League in this regard.
Mr. Ashri, allow me to ask you, how might changes in the U.S. policy under Trump's administration affect future funding decisions?
There will be negative implications. There has been already a U.S. decline in support. Trump taken a lot of strategic decisions, withdrawing from the WHO, withdrawing from the climate agreement, the Paris Agreement, and also withdrawing from the ICC and the ICJ, from the UNESCO. All of these withdrawals will lead to a huge decline in the financial allocations to international institutions. It is highly serious, and a lot of warnings have been issued by international institutions. This will lead to decline in services and programs of social development, food development, and other fields of development allocated for refugees and people in distress around the world. This will also impact Palestinians. In this Trump term for 4 years, there will be decline in all relief and development institutions that are serving vulnerable populations around the world, not only in Africa and in Palestine. Trump is really dangerous when it comes to suspending U.S. support, as we will face a lot of declines of financial allocations because of the violent Trump policies suspending aid and support to such institutions, especially to vulnerable populations.
Dr. Osman, welcome once again. I want to ask you, Dr. Osman, are there alternative models or reforms being considered for refugee support systems like UNRWA's structure today?
Hello, Hala, and apologies on account of the technical difficulties on my part. I think that there are no viable alternatives that might completely replace the role of UNRWA, because people have to understand UNRWA was established by a UN resolution as a UN specialized agency in 1949. That's even before the establishment of the UNHCR, the UN High Commissioner for for Refugees. So it's very important to note that this is a specialized agency that was created for the purpose of serving the Palestinian refugees who were displaced from their land since 1948. So you can imagine that such a specialized agency with such a huge tradition and immense expertise working with the Palestinian situation, if they are out of the equation, it will create a gap that cannot be bridged. The only alternative to what's going on right now is to substantially increase the funding. The problem is, for example, the United States and Germany account for over 60% of the funding of UNRWA, and both have already frozen their funding and even cut their funding entirely in the case of the United States since over a year ago. Now, many other countries, European countries, wealthy Arab nations, even China, have to step in order to substantially increase the funding of UNRWA to keep it alive. And the other step that has to be taken is applying more pressure on Israel, the United Nations, the international community, so that they would stop targeting UNRWA. Now they are closing down UNRWA offices in the West Bank. They have killed, as I said, 200 UNRWA personnel inside the Gaza Strip, and they have targeted their residences, their schools, their clinics, and destroyed them. Israel has to be held accountable for the intentional targeting of those international humanitarian workers who are UN personnel as well. I think that UNRWA is indispensable, Hala, and any propositions that this organization should be pushed out of the picture or dismembered or disbanded is equivalent to supporting and calling for the displacement and the liquidation of the Palestinian cause.
So, Dr. Osman, taking into consideration what you have just told us, what legal implications arise from such a significant shift in international aid policies?
It will create a crisis. It will create a trust crisis all around the world. And this is already compounded by the behavior of the Trump administration domestically with, for example, the effective dissolution of USAID, the USAID. And this is creating already a problem for many countries around the world. And now with what's going on with UNRWA, a specialized United Nations agency, this is not some local governmental aid agency or an NGO. This is a UN agency.
It's a UN agency,
and yet
yes.
It is being attacked vehemently by the United States and other countries. Let's not forget, many European countries have cut funding to UNRWA, and some of them have restored funding, many of them haven't yet. And this is a very, very dangerous indication.
Indeed.
Everyone needs to take up to the responsibilities, and because this is a crime against the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people have already sustained a huge amount of violations and crimes over the past 15 months, and adding more crimes against them and against their livelihoods and against their ability to maintain a basic dignified life is abominable, and I think that the United States ought to be ashamed of itself for taking such a course of action.
Yes. Mr. Ashri, can organizations like the World Food Program or UNICEF replace UNRWA's role effectively?
Difficult. UNRWA is a specialized agency to help the Palestinian population approved by the Security Council and the United Nations, and cannot be dismantled except with a similar decision, which will lead to a crisis. Now we're facing the lack of financing because of withdrawing major states like the United States of America, which will lead in the decline of development and food and water services for refugees, especially inside Palestine. This cannot be. The alternative is the bigger financial allocations from major states such as the Gulf states, but we need substantially more financial support from the Gulf and from the Arab funds who have a lot of abundance and can allocate more financial aid to the UNRWA. The UNRWA cannot be replaced by another organization. It has been established since 1949 and with a lot of experience in serving Palestinian refugees with specialized programs for education of Palestinian kids, in addition to hospitals and healthcare facilities. It only requires financial funding. We have the basics of the UNRWA and it's working. It only requires the funding that can be provided by alternative entities and states. The Arab states and the European Union states can actually provide alternative fundings to the UNRWA, as cancelling and dismantling the UNRWA means deeming 5.6 million Palestinians to death and the lack of life.
Yes, thank you very much, my dear guest, Dr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, and Mr. Ashraf Al Ashri, Managing Editor at Al Ahram newspaper. Many thanks for your valuable insights.